Good evening, everybody. It is 7 p.m. in New York City and 4 p.m. in St. Helena, California. I'm Sam Kimball from Crush Wine Experiences, and thank you so much for joining us on virtual day trip to wine country, presented by Citi. We are here for a really cool visit with Tres Sabores Winery, where the folks are passionate about food, wine, the land, the environment, and where for the last 30 years, the owner, founder, winemaker has lived on a certified organic farm growing wine grapes, Cabernet Sauvignon, Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, and others, as well as pomegranates, lemons, olives, and some other amazing things. She is an extraordinary woman. You're going to learn a lot more about her and about the brand Tres Sabores. The theme for the night is simply authenticity and diversity. Authentic winemaking, authentic stewardship and passion for the land, diversity of the team, and also a woman-led organization, diversity of the styles and types of wines that Tres Sabores produces. And I do have to share a little bit of background. We did our first Tres Sabores virtual tasting event in 2020 in the height of the pandemic. And in prior years before COVID-19, we had Tres Sabores at the Zinfandel Experience in New York City, where we did, for a number of years, we did the Zinex NYC Zinfandel Experience with some of the best winemakers in California, which of course means some of the best winemakers in the world. A few stats, a few fun facts. Tres Sabores, the winery, makes about 3,500 cases of wine a year. So it's small production. It's super focused. It sits on 35 acres of land in Rutherford, California, or St. Helena. It's part of the Rutherford appellation, where they grow Zinfandel and Cabernet Sauvignon right there on the estate. And it is really an extraordinary place. And I'm excited to be here with all of you this evening. And I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I see people hitting the chat. Welcome, everyone. Welcome all. Please ask us any questions. Please stop us, interrupt us, interject at any point, and we will respond and answer live during the session. And while you're in the chat, tell us where you're tuning in from. I see Florida, Long Island, Washington State, New Jersey. Awesome. I love it. It's so great to see everyone. I see some new faces, but I also see some of our old friends who have been with us on other broadcasts. So it's really great to see everyone. East Northport, John. So the evening that we're doing tonight, we're traveling virtually to St. Helena, which I don't know how many people have been to Napa Valley, and how many people have been to the little town of St. Helena. Tell us in the chat if you've been there. I think it's one of the most picturesque, most sort of postcard-esque towns in all of Napa. It's absolutely beautiful. And when we think about Napa, we think about obviously a world-class wine region. And if you look at where Tres Sabores is, let me actually show you guys the map of where we're headed. It's smack dab in the middle of the Napa Valley. You can see it there. The little red pin on the map behind me is Tres Sabores in St. Helena. And just an absolutely iconic part of the world for making wine and growing grapes. Everyone knows it as a famous wine region. And many of you may know, because I can see from who's logged on, there's some people here who really do know their wine. The fact of the matter is that it's worth revisiting. Only 4% of all the wine grapes grown in California are actually grown in the Napa Valley. It's a dry Mediterranean climate. The temperatures in the summer get quite hot. It only covers 2%. I love this little factoid. It covers 2% of the world's surface area, the Earth's surface. And yet Napa Valley, as an industry, represents $50 billion a year in the US economy. which is just extraordinary. If you think about the depth and the breadth, it's not a tiny place, but it's, it's only 4% of the wine grapes in California. And in the Napa region, there are approximately 400 and some 425, 430 wineries producing roughly 800 and something different wine brands. So just an amazing place. I'm overdue for a visit. I think I'm going to go bother our guest, Julie, soon. I keep threatening to drive across the country and just make the rounds. And it would be amazing to be there. So before we get started, I wanted to share with you guys a cool thing that we're doing tonight when Tres Sabores has offered us. And this is, I'm going to share my screen. This is a preview of the wines that we're going to taste and also your access to getting them. So let's take a look real quick. Before we introduce our amazing guests, and we have two actually tonight, which I'm really excited about, I want to share my screen again and actually show you guys a video that I think captures the spirit of Tres Sabores. So here we go. I love it. It's right on the money. You see the topography, you see the hills. It's so great to see this part of the world. I almost feel like I'm there. And what I love about the fact that Julie is where she is tonight. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest, Julie Johnson, who is the winemaker and owner and founder of Tres Sabores, and Maggie Mazzotti, who's the operations manager. It's so great having you guys. Welcome, Julie and Maggie. Thank you for traveling across the U.S. virtually and joining us here on the East Coast and around the country.
Well, we could almost, thank you so much, Sam. It is really nice to see you again. I can't believe it's been 2 years since we started COVID. And I think I was maybe one of your first broadcasts. And so you were one of ours too. We've done hundreds since then, but you know what? The vine and have gone through a lot, in the last few years when you think about fires and drought and crazy COVIDness. But here we are still. Isn't that really emblematic of what wines and vines are all about? Just like there's always a new vintage, but there's always the terroir. And when somebody says, geez, like they don't really know about grape growing, and it's like you could almost turn the spigot on, like making a gin or making a beer or whatever. And then you say, no, it takes kind of 5 years to get from planting rootstock And for us, because we're primarily dry farmed, letting everything grow and dig in, and the rootstock getting strong and digging deep and deep and deeper, and then you butt it to the scion that gives you Zinfandel or Cabernet or Petit Syrah or Petit Verdot, the varieties we get here. And then it's just, then it's 6 years, and then it's already it's another 6 years, and then it's another 2 years before you actually even harvest and get wine on the market. So this is a very long process. And
yeah, and I want to. I'm glad you
great.
brought that up, because when we visited last, which was I think around July or August 2020, midst of the pandemic, and there was, as there is still, real drought, and you had confidence that you would, the grapes would figure it out. But you talked, I think, rather, it was very impactful the way you talked about, well, I'm hoping that this block or this area of the vineyard is going to come through, and you dry farmed, meaning there's no irrigation. And so what's happened since? I mean, what's the road been since that virtual tasting where you said all that?
Okay, well, excuse me. I have to pause here because I'm either going to cry or take a big fat sip of wine, because that's like, fuerte, the strength of it all, Oh my gosh, what hasn't happened? We had fire, not one, but two fires. We had huge drought last year, 13 inches of rain. That's nothing. This year, kind of, thank goodness, so far, so good, kind of a recovery year. I have two more grandchildren than I had.
Wow.
What else has happened? It's farming. Hello, it's farming. Can I say that again and take another sip of wine? But there's been a lot happening. And, I think since then, there are books like The Mother Tree have come out where the book talks about how we don't even understand yet the communication that's happening within these spaces that we call agriculture, but really for us here at Tres Sabores and so many other friends in progressive agriculture in the Napa Valley, it really is about emulating nature. And it really is, we're getting closer and closer to unraveling some of that mystery. Why do these vines continue to produce really excellent wine when if it was just a tomato, there would be no way, So
yeah,
as mundane as that sounds, our tomatoes are gorgeous this year, but it's like, it's not wine. And once again, I feel last year at this time, I was starting to be a little bit more confident, like things might resolve in actually wine with far less crop. The vines pay attention, right? That's the bottom line. The vines pay attention. They pay attention to each other. They pay attention to the microbes in the soil. The microbes in the soil communicate with them, help them communicate with other vines. It's a pretty amazing process. And we're starting to understand. I said, if my vines got through last year's drought, through the fires and brimstone of 17 and 20, and through last year's drought, that I would truly know that there was something more going on than just simply putting vines in the ground. And some of the vines here have been in the ground for 50 years. Some of the vines right next to me here, vines have been in the ground for 30 plus years, since 1989. And, it's really a marvel. I can't tell you that enough. And I know that probably sounds really, really silly to say, but it's really something quite spectacular. And the fact that people have been recognizing this for 10,000 years, somebody could look at me from 1,000 years ago. Yeah, Julie, duh, this is what we do. But isn't that kind of fun to be in? Sam, isn't it kind of good to be drinking a beautiful beverage that you love, that that somebody 1,000, 6,000, 10,000 years ago really loved as well, without all that much change?
It's amazing. Well, it's what brought me to the wine industry, and it's what makes my job fun. All right. So we have, let's see here, a couple of, let's see. Nancy says, doesn't sound silly. It's a learning process for a human and the vines. Yeah.
Well, here's our learning process right now. So we are just, for the most part, like I said, we're trying to emulate nature. And so, but yet Wendell Berry would say, hey, but you have the right to be a farmer that makes some money. So how do you put that appreciation together with what you're actually doing? We're so tiny here. This is like a little lab, but we can
Yep.
have some fun with it. So we're kind of resetting our cover crop this year to be more resilient. We use a funny machine called a crimper that rolls our cover crop down and enables us to form a mat that sequesters carbon, and creates a habitat for even more microorganisms than we already have, having farmed without any synthetic chemicals now for, well over since 1987. So there's a good habitat here for things, but how do you work with that and how do you make the vines sing? Well, you continue to give them special soil to work with. So this year we're working to see what more we can do in terms of the range and the diversity of crops that we plant, that we seed, along with our compost that we throw in, that we scatter, that we spray throughout the vineyard, coming up very shortly to set us on the course for another successful, hopefully, year.
Now, let me
Everything
ask
we
you,
learn is incredible.
let me ask you a question on that. So, because I'm more and more conscious of sort of looking for information about how natural wines are, how minimal intervention they are. There are regions in the world where they grow vinifera, the traditional European grapes, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, where
Don't
they have
forget
to
Zinfandel. Don't forget Zinfandel.
Zinfandel. Well, yeah, the ones I'm thinking of are ones where they don't grow Zinfandel, but where they have to spray a lot to keep those grapes growing well, to because there's moisture, because there's mildew.
Sure.
And so talk a little bit about, you are a steward of the land. You're essentially an environmentalist in the best way. How do you, what is Tres Sabores' position on all that? How much of it, or how much not of it do you do? And tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I will fully admit that we are in a most fortunate place in the world. We're in one of the prime temperate zones. We're a coastal valley, which means we get fog from 2 or 3 directions.
Yep.
Every 3 or 4 mornings. We heat up to, so far so good this year. Sometimes we have heat spikes well into the hundreds. This year it's been fairly moderate. We have essentially no humidity. So we're in a pretty darn good place. It's pretty luxurious, but there are quite a few regions in the world that are not unlike this. So part of the whole story is finding the place that's suitable for growing grapes. There are lots of grapes here in the Napa Valley that are planted where they really shouldn't be, planted in swamps or planted in too extreme a condition, and that people struggle to do that. I'm not saying if you're in Virginia and you have an incredible amount of humidity that you shouldn't grow grapes. I just think that I fully admit that it takes a lot more energy to grow organically, and it takes far more energy to look at getting outside of a box and not working at all in any kind of formula. I'm lucky here because I live here on the property and I can work with myself, with my son, with the other people that I work with to help me with observing what needs to go on. So our spray frequency is far lower than it used to be. One of the things that, and I will tell you this, Sam, it's pretty cool. One of the things that's happening is coming full circle. One of the newest things in viticulture, besides learning how to irrigate, drip irrigate, or irrigate and measure what you're doing, and have a tool to make sure that you're doing what you need to do when you need to do it, which has always been a principle of organic ag. Even don't add anything, don't add any nutrient, don't do anything unless you really know that you have to do it and you have some foundation for that. One of the coolest things that we've been experimenting for the last few years is the use of biologicals. So instead of spraying a lot of sulfur as much as we used to, we're now working with a company that produces a sort of a kombucha of of bacteria and fungi and in a kelp base. And when we spray that on our vineyards in the springtime and through bloom, through early June, that sets up a natural competitive atmosphere template um, to fight the fungi and the other kinds of mildew inducing organisms that are problematic. And we've had great success working with those biologicals and moving the needle just a little bit further on towards not even using as much sulfur, which is
Hmm.
classified as an organic material, and it's an element, the basic element. It's not the voodoo, it's not the voodoo chemical that everybody would think, but we're all trying to move along that spectrum. And it's one of the most exciting things that I know of that's out there. You know, if there are pests, more companies are coming out with a range of pheromone lures
Hmm.
to basically drive the bugs, drive the males crazy. I'm sorry about that for that reference, but that's basically what they do, you know. And
Julie,
companies
what
doing
doesn't
doing
drive
a
them
good job.
crazy? Is there
What
anything that doesn't drive the males crazy?
I don't know. I'm not even going to get close to that. You're going to get me there. But I have to drive to Placerville tonight we have a pick pool harvest beginning at 5:30 tomorrow morning. It's one of the
Wow.
crazy varietals that we do. So we're going up to Placerville to deliver the final load of bins that we need to. And we're tomorrow, with any good grace of God, we'll be here about 10 o'clock tomorrow morning with about 2.5 to 3 tons of pig pool. But so anyway, don't talk to me. I have to sit in the car with my husband for that. So don't get me
Ah,
started. But the point is that there's finally so much progressive farming able to be happen. And finally, we're starting to get some statistics and some research accomplished that really will help farmers everywhere move closer. The other
yep.
thing that's happening is I think people across, I was just talking with one of my favorite friends, Pam Strayer. She writes for Slow Food Wine, which is a
Hmm.
great guide for everybody if you're interested in who's doing authentic work with viticulture in the United States. Very good. Kind of a pitch for her, a shout out for her. But yes, slow food, you've heard about the slow food wine guides, especially in
Yep.
Italy. Slow food has come big time to the United States, is holding people to authenticity and no herbicides, meaning
Hmm.
Roundup, in the vineyard floor and going from there. But one of the exciting things is really taking that quest for diversity internationally. So she just came back from France and she said, you know what everybody is doing, Julie, is having stripped away a lot of trees and pulled out a lot of native plant hedgerows, they're planting again. And that is the other thing I can say that we're doing here in the
Hmm.
Napa Valley, sure, but other areas I know, you're planting essentially pest nursery, beneficial nurseries, and establishing again the diverse atmosphere that helps a vineyard or any ecosystem for that matter set up its own defense system and set up its own, hey, I'm going to thrive in this environment sort of system. And as more and more people are moving forward, I want to give you another resource, two more resources for people who are interested in a little bit more of a deep dive into what this means. The Wild Farm Alliance in California is doing amazing things, as is a program that I subscribe to, and I'm proud to be third party certified in addition to my organic certification, Napa Green, Napa Green Winery, and also Napa Green Vineyard takes the whole perspective so much further than the organic picture has in the past. But what we've all needed, tools. What we've all needed is a reasons and a means for measuring what we're doing. And we're not there yet, but we're gradually getting there. And we're already seeing results. A lot of research in the vineyard, you put down compost. Typical scientific endeavor would take 10 years to come up with results. Well, so much of what we're doing and experimenting with is real-time experimentation and real-time results. And it's been very encouraging and very gratifying and very exciting so far. So it has to do with water conservation. It has to do with nutrient conservation. It has to do with implementing diversity has to do with bringing in beneficial insects and beneficial birds. My favorites. You know, I'm a bluebird nut, a real bluebird. In our case, Western bluebirds. You guys back there, you have Eastern bluebirds. But those little dedicated insectivorous, that takes a lot to say, dedicated insectivorous birds are marvelous bad pest eating machines. And we're all about incorporating that. And then our nighttime predators, owls, and so on are and even spiders.
Yeah.
Our nighttime carnivores are important to it as well. So part of it is creating that atmosphere to welcome all of it, just set it up. And then all I have to do is live here. I think that if somebody valued that everybody lived somewhere on their farm, or valued the people who are already living on their farm enough about their health and about their well-being and about their atmosphere, that we would have a lot fewer pesticides in the world, because people would say, oh, I don't want my child living on this vineyard or whatever to be exposed to this. And more people doing that, I think, all the time will gradually turn people around to say, yeah, people need to go live on a farm, and a farm that's not implementing a chemical response to issues, but rather a natural biological approach. It doesn't mean that it's any less effective. It just means that we have to spend some time right now coming back to what a lot of native peoples discovered millennia ago.
Yeah.
Sorry to get so in the weeds about organic ag, but I get all excited about that. That's
a couple of questions. Well, so let's just establish something. Let's be clear. Tres Sabores is organic. It's certified organic.
We're certified organically grown, which is far different from
organic.
Europe, where there's one certification. Here in the United States, by law, USDA, there's a certification for wine, which means no sulfites whatsoever. And it also means there's a certification for growing. I'm an organic grower. And I will speak to a little bit about organic winemaking. There are also biologicals available now, more and more, for us to, whatever minimal inputs that I use, I'm able to pay more attention to what those are and that they're organically certified.
Let me ask you a question.
I love clean wine. I love wine that smells and tastes really fresh, really like a grape smushed in my,
like the wines we're tasting tonight.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. One is from me, just a general question. When you talk about sulfur and sulfites, you're talking about the same thing, yes?
I'm talking about the same basic.
So sulfur and sulfites are the same thing.
Different forms of the same thing.
Right.
So sulfite is in a wine that you can add to a wine. Sulfur is naturally in every living form, and it carries over into the wine. There's a certain amount of natural, just like there's a certain amount of natural yeast that comes in on any skin. So there's a natural amount of sulfur. It's essential to operating any system.
And what are sulfites? Explain for everybody watching. Why does most bottles of wine say contain sulfites?
Because sulfite is a natural form, a chemical form that is an anti-biological and essentially a freshening agent. So sulfur, you take sulfide, right? Drugs. Well, this is not putting drugs in your wine by a far thing, but it does serve much the same purpose. A little bit, a tiny, tiny little bit, micro percentages of sulfur added to a wine can help preserve the freshness of that wine. And
we have a question. We promised we would answer questions on the fly. We have a question. Are sulfite, Nancy's asked a question, are sulfites only in red wines?
No, not at all. Sulfite is what a sulfite is. A sulfite is a form of sulfur that a winemaker can add to a wine. It's naturally occurring in any fermentation process. So your orange juice starts to slightly slightly turned, there's sulfite in there. Any processed food will have a form of sulfite added to it. So red wines, white wines, rosés, people can add that substance, that natural substance to their wines to help keep spoilage organisms from
Yep.
taking over. Now, some people like Brettanomyces, for example. If you're a big beer fan and you know what Brettanomyces is, it comes in several forms. It has it can have a wet blanket smell, a horse blanket smell. It can have a little bit in its small amounts. It can have a little bit of mushroomy smell. It can smell a little sweet to some people. Some people, like I say, love it in their beer. But for me, I'm not a big fan of that aromatic or flavor composition. So I will add additional sulfites less and less all the time because there are so many more biological controls available now to me, but less and less. I'm not abashed to say that's something that I do add to my wines, especially at finishing now, especially at finishing going into the bottle, because I don't want the bottle to erupt. I ferment to dryness.
Yep.
But I don't, which is really important, but I don't want my wines to turn, to spoil, or to lose their bright, almost crystalline freshness. That's naturally part of the fermentation process, but I want to keep that essence for everybody. So I'm looking at right now, here's a glass, if you can see. I'm sorry, I'm keep moving with the sun.
The light, you got to move with the light.
West. But anyway, this is, let's see if I can get this to Peter. Anyway, this is a glass of naturally fermenting Sauvignon, rosé of Zinfandel.
So is this a Zinfandel Petnat?
No, well, at this point it is. If I tried to bottle this, it would be bottled under pressure. It's not completely finished fermenting, but I should. This is about halfway through, and in the end, I will blend this, the Petit Syrah that I've made as a rosé, and this is Zinfandel that I've made as a rosé, and I'll blend those to make the final rosé that we make, that some of you actually may have in front of you. But this right now, yeah, I could bottle this. It's very cloudy. It's still very active. If I bottled this right now without any sulfite, it would probably erupt in the bottle. It might even explode, but it would have to be bottled under pressure because the yeast are active, creating carbon dioxide. Boom.
Yep.
It's if you were here right now and you put your face in the tank where this is fermenting, it would be like, whoa, you couldn't take it because there'd be so much carbon dioxide coming off of it. Not a great smell, but what's in this glass right now is really savory and tantalizing. And it's like walking into a disco and like the sparkle ball effect, and it's full right now of strawberries and watermelons and that kind of wonderful peach melba ice cream kind of creaminess that comes only from Zinfandel made as a true rosé, directly pressed. And I'll finish this dry and it will be on my table with oysters by February. So
all right, so Julie, this is a great lead-in to our first wine of the evening, which is the 2021 Tres Sabores Ingrid and Julia Rosé. Which I've already started sipping, and it is so fresh and it is so clean tasting. And listen, I taste a lot of wine. I just know right away when something is just pure, and this wine just knocks me out. And so tell us a little bit about this one. I'm going to put up the bottle on the screen. By the way, for anybody watching at home, I've paired it with the Humboldt Fog goat cheese.
Nice.
Maggie, I tried to get the purple haze. The cheese shop in my town was like, yeah, we know the purple haze. And I was like, well, do people ask for it? And they said, no, you're the first person who's asked for it.
Because it's made with fennel and lavender.
I mean, they were a little bit like cheeky with me, and I was like, all right, I'll take the Humboldt Fog.
No. Humboldt Fog is great, and it's local, and we appreciate the effort.
But by the way, the wine, I'm loving the wine. I was sipping it while we were talking, and then I had a bite of the Humboldt Fog cheese, and I had another sip of the wine, and it set me free. It was unbelievable.
Well, here's what we do. Here's how we make this wine. So this is Zinfandel. I mean, Oh my gosh. Can you see that? I'm sorry. I'm gonna move. Um, so you can see this because you have to see this cluster. I mean, it's just amazing. Look, can you see that all right? Look at this
Wow.
cluster. I mean, okay, so there are two parts to this cluster. There's a
Wow.
little shoulder over here, and then there's the main cluster. Well, Zinfandel, thin skin, gorgeous, savory, spicy, a little bit of a rambunctious soul here. What we do, you can see this here. What we do to make our rosé, pardon for the al fresco plein air sort of approach. What we do to make our rosé is we take off the shoulder. And
Ah.
this is what we press. Can you hold that for me? We're just on the fly on the crush pad. Um, this is what we put into the press. We leave this behind. So the main cluster stays behind. Zinfandel doesn't ripen very evenly. So this just spends another 3 weeks on the vine, getting nice and savory, getting all the rich phenolics that a wine growing region like the Napa Valley or Sonoma or Bordeaux can develop, coastal valleys, hangs on the vine for another 3 weeks or so. Meanwhile, this goes in the press and gives us a wine that has a lower pH,
Mhm.
higher acid, so it's bright, and not as much alcohol. It's not as sweet. So that's the idea in a fresh, crisp rosé. But we do things a little bit differently. So we take very expensive estate,
Yeah.
Rutherford, dry farmed, organically farmed Zinfandel, and we use part of it for our rosé. But the proof is in that, I love rosé. I never really loved white Zinfandel as made in the sweeter form. I have to
Well, it
admit
was
that.
it
I'm
was
sorry.
sweet. So, it was really sweet. You had to like that sort of style.
Fermenting just the pulp,
Hmm.
that's true rosé. We're fermenting just the white pulp, but it's in press for about 90 minutes of skin contact, and that's what gives that wonderful
90 minutes. So that's why it's
90
so
minutes. That's
so
it.
pale. It's
It's
so
so
pale.
pale. I mean, color is very sticky chemically,
Yeah.
but sticky enough to give that other color, that pale pink color, and it gets a little bit more salmon as it
Yeah.
develops. Some of the color drops out. That's fine with me
And
because this is just
how
true
many
rosé.
cases of this rosé do you make?
500.
500.
Yeah,
Okay.
most
Now
most of my wines are far less than that.
I'm compelled to tell everybody, many people may not know this watching. Um, Julie was one of the founders of Frog's Leap Winery. How many cases of wine does Frog's Leap make?
Quite a bit more. But so I started Frog Sleep with my first husband, John Williams, who's very much a path breaker in organic farming, and Larry Turley. A true story. We sold our motorcycle. It was an R90S BMW for those of you who love motorcycles. So we were able to buy our first fruit, and we bought Sauvignon Blanc from Spotswood Winery, and then they kind of twisted our arms to buy Zinfandel as well, which started me off on my love of Zinfandel for sure. So to this day, when John Williams and I found this beautiful vineyard that had 10 acres of Rutherford Bench Zinfandel, we just went for it. It was great. And so when I did sales and marketing for Frog's Leap, I mean, kind of off the hip because I was a public health nurse at the time and then a mom. And then, women always wear multiple hats, right? You never take the hats off. It's one of those things, but it's, like I say, how lovely to be able to live here in this atmosphere with my grapes as my front yard and my grandkids close. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. But after 20 years with Frog's Leap, I'm looking out my front door and going, I really want to know more about what's going on with viticulture. And I didn't set out to be a winemaker per se, but it sort of evolved that way. So 22 years or more after that, started Tres Sabores in 99. By the way, if I can explain, Tres Sabores means 3 flavors in Spanish.
Yep.
It's everything that I stand for. It's the 3 tastes in every glass: the vine, the terroir, the place where it's grown. That's the holy grail for every winemaker. But
Yep.
even more important than that, it's the good company gathered around the table to drink a glass of wine together. Why do I still have cork? Well, cork is one of the most incredible carbon sequestration machines alive, but it also slows you down a bit. It
Yep.
gives you the grace of the table. It allows
You gotta open the bottle. You can't just unscrew it.
Well, I drink a lot of white wine, the screw caps and so on. I don't mind that. But for my own wines, I wanted to just say, oh, and there's a little honeybee right here. I wish you could see. We've got a hive. Hello there.
So
but,
Julie, we have a question from Mark or a comment, which I'd love for you to respond to. Mark mentioned the rosé process seems kind of like a soigné on the vine.
The great way of, that's a great way of talking about it. Yes, we're selecting a special part. Now, of course you can make rosé out of anything, because if you just take away the skins, but we should be talking about rosé right now because it's summer. It's still summer, right? I mean, it's still great wine. You can have it with BLTs in the morning. You can have it with ribs at night. You can have it with oysters for lunch, right? But it's like one of those is crisp, fresh. Maggie, what do we do with it all the time? We actually put some soda water and some lime and make kind of a spritz out of it sometimes if we're drinking the bottle.
Rosé spritzes.
Right, rosé spritzes is great, but anyway, yeah, I think the idea of Saunier on the vine, and you obviously, Mark, you understand the difference between the Saunier wine and a wine that's true and direct to press, which is what we're trying to do.
So Julie, I want to be mindful of time. I'm so enjoying the rosé. I could keep going for a while, but let's move on to the red blend, which is the Porquet-No, which is the next wine.
Sounds great.
And for anybody who's curious, with Maggie's guidance, I am pairing this with a really beautiful Manchego, like an aged Manchego.
Oh yeah.
And so tell us a little about it. This is a blend. What are the grapes in the Porquet-No red blend? And I mean, I just poured it for the first time. I've never had this wine. I'm going to hold it up here. Let me see if I can. I'm just going to hold it here. Can everybody see it if I hold it up like this?
Yeah.
Look how dark that color is. It's really striking coming out of the bottle. And so tell us a little bit about it. I can't wait to taste it. I've never had this one.
Please taste it. Please taste it. Porquet-No came about because I was making wine. Well, initially I had 3 winemakers exploring this old vineyard and what could it do? And I had them each make their own cuvee, and then we sold the cuvee in 3 packs. So it was like an instant horizontal flavor, 3 flavors of the vineyard, 3 tastes of terroir. And so that was great, but we had wine left over. So I basically said, well, I didn't plan on having wine left over. What do you want to do? And they said, well, hey, why don't you just blend it together and see what happens? And so we did. And that was basically Porquet-No. It was like, well, why don't you just blend it together? We're like, why not? Yeah. Remember, this was in 2000 when you couldn't find many blends from California at that time. We were all exploring things. We were all pretty much purists. But we started blending things that were a little unique. Zinfandel with Cabernet, with Petit Syrah, and with just a tiny little bit of Petit Verdot, just for a little minerality and blueberry zing. But it was kind of novel, still is kind of novel. The percentages change a little bit, and change a little bit every year. And what you're tasting and seeing is that this year the percentage of the Petit Syrah is a little higher. It's about 49%. And so there you're getting that gregarious, dark and delicious. I'm getting like a beautiful leather off of it. Yeah, got some red
jazz,
fruit. Yeah, put the jazz on, or put the salsa on and drink the wine.
And it's really balanced. I don't know what I have the bottle here. I don't know what the alcohol percentage is, but it's shy. It's super balanced. It's 14.6. it's 14 and something.
14.6 or 14.7.
14.8,
Oh my
14.8.
goodness.
This is a powerful wine, not to be chugged, but man, is it delicious. It's like the balance is incredible. It doesn't taste like 14.8. It tastes like 12.8.
Well, thank you. That's the idea. Although people have to be mindful of that for sure. And I sure am mindful of it. But sometimes in California, this was a beautiful year and great for ripening. And that's what California is doing. Somebody said the other day, the sun is a little bit more intense. And I'm looking obviously straight at the Western sun right now, and it's a little intense, but the flavor, these grapes all go together historically in California.
So this has Petite Syrah,
Cabernet, Zinfandel, and Petit Verdot.
oh wow, 4.
But
wow.
1% of Petit Syrah, I mean Petit Verdot.
Now this has got a ton of horsepower. What's your favorite meal to pair with this?
Oh, this is something barbecue for sure. Or this is a pizza night for sure.
I was going to say pizza, Julie. I was going to say pizza.
But I make something that I serve at the Rutherford. Rutherford is really a fun appellation to be in. We have we're very community minded. We have an Appalachian wide chili ball every year. So as a once and future vegetarian, I always make a vegetarian cashew chili. That is, I will say to die for. I never win. The firefighters, the Rutherford Firefighter Volunteer Fire Department from Rutherford, they always win. It's rigged. That's okay. I don't have a problem with that. But all I know is that my cashew chili, originally from Cabbagetown Cafe in Ithaca, New York, my savory chili is so good with this wine because this is a wine that you're right. It has good balance. It has good acid, and that's what I always look for in a wine.
Julie, I don't want to get everybody riled up, but I think what we're saying is the chili contest voting is rigged.
It is rigged, but you can come and you can vote. You can put your ticket, right, Maggie? We were doing up a storm. You can put your ticket in my box next year. It's very hard to get tickets, so come. But it's one of those things that I enjoy doing, and that's the point.
So I ordered in tonight. There's other people in the house and they already ate dinner, but there's the local pizza place, just like the local Joe pizza place, big, large pie, greasy cheese. This unbelievable.
It cuts through.
Yeah.
It cuts through. It's like I make a Sauvignon Blanc and you wouldn't think, oh, Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, great. Let's talk fish tacos. Let's talk, scampi. Let's talk. But no, what does it really go really well with, brilliantly with? Cold corn, roasted corn soup with a big dollop of goat cheese and herbs.
How about Mexican street corn?
Well, yeah. Oh, whoa, in spades for that. But by the same notion, the portobello would go really well with Mexican street corn because
absolutely
it's unctuous, it's sumptuous, and it's roasted, and it has all that character.
Did you say unctuous?
I said unctuous.
You said unctuous. Julia, I'm gonna have to look that up now.
Oh no, it's just follow your palate, Sam. That's all you need to do.
I love unctuous.
I never pick any grapes without thinking about how to make myself hungry, like thinking about what I want with them.
I'm moving on to the Petite Syrah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
If you can see this bottle, I'm about to pour a glass. Never had it.
Oh, okay.
So, Julie, what is it? What do we got here?
Well, this is from a single vineyard because so much of what I do, despite the portobello we just talked about, it's from a single vineyard up in Calistoga. It's also dry farmed. It was planted, 22 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And
black fruit.
Black fruit. This is the most garrulous. Okay, so here I've got a drumstick in one hand and I'm on a ship and I'm jumping from ship to ship and I'm just like going all out.
Oh my God.
And so it's just dark and delicious. And I love Petite Syrah.
Oh
I
man.
know these, I know I was out sampling this vineyard this morning, not ready to come in. How do I know? Because the skins are still a little dicey. There's still a little bit too much tannin. When the skins start to turn around and they taste more like about a 72% cacao bar,
Oh my
that's when it's
God.
time to pick.
Yeah.
So it's at that point that it's not only just a cacao bar, it is, you know how a lot of chocolate, and this is all, you get all these fancy descriptions of wine and fancy descriptions of zin and so on, of wine and chocolate and coffee. You know, they're always saying roasted apricot and hints of vanilla and blah blah blah. Well, the reason why I have a wine called Perspective is because it's all up to you. The reason why you will not see points on my wine is I don't enter them. I feel like it's all up to you. And that's your perspective. For the same thing about a wine like this. This is all up to you to figure out what you like about this. But I will tell you, this is a wine. If you're a meat eater, this is a wine too. Oh my gosh, this is like you could do steak
This
and
is black fruit. It's
Marionberry,
chocolate. It's like
Marionberry pie. Yeah.
it's so big and delicious. By the way, please enter these into contests. If you enter these wine into contests, they're going to be like the best wines. I kid you not. So, how much of this wine, and this is a question for you and Maggie both, how much of your wine do you sell at the tasting room versus like wholesale to retailers or to restaurants?
This is a wine that's only 250 cases,
I mean, I got to
but
tell
we
you,
sell
if
most of
you
it for
like
more.
red wine, order this wine. It is
Well, you're
beyond
very nice to say
spectacular.
that. Well, it's just like I say, it's gregarious. It wants to have a conversation with you, and all the better if there are more
I
people around
mean,
the table. So
my
it's
God.
it's good that way.
Yeah, this, and it's a great wine. If you like meat, it's a great wine.
But if
Um,
you don't like meat, like I'm not a big meat eater, but this is
I'm not either.
wonderful. I mean, I found this great soy sauce that's made with black garlic. Oh my God, it's like just so
Yeah.
savory and and it goes so well. I mean, I can just roast some vegetables, especially this time of the year. Who doesn't have zucchini and corn and tomatoes coming out of your ears? And it's like roasting up some vegetables and adding the condiments and drinking a wine like this. It really works. Now, I would add a little bit of cheese. I would add a little bit of protein. I would add some roasted nuts. I would add some roasted, really well roasted onions to this, or something like a roasted squash, or
Julie,
sweet potato, but it's still to give it some body to match the body of the wine.
as
You have to
soon as
think
we
of the
sign
body.
off, I'm going downstairs. I'm gonna start throwing all the pots and pans around. I'm gonna get all the stuff out of the fridge. I'm gonna make a best vegetable lasagna you've ever had, and I'm gonna
That's
serve this wine.
Make sure you caramelize the onions for that lasagna
It's
really
gonna be
well.
like
Really help.
off the hook
Yeah, really,
vegetable
really help.
lasagna with this, because
There's
this is can match it.
I don't know if it's still in Manhattan. Do you still have a Beecher's in Manhattan?
What?
In
So
Queens?
wait, hold on, Maggie. So you told me. So I went to the cheese shop today. I said, Maggie. I was talking to Maggie yesterday. I said, Maggie, give me a cheese for each one. And the first two, well, I did the manchego as I was supposed to, but the first one I failed, the purple haze, which I love.
You didn't fail. It sounds like you tried.
Jimi Hendrix, that cheeky lady at the wine store. And then I went the last one. I said, I want aged cheddar and I wanted Beecher's, and she had it. So
Oh,
I'm having
yay.
Beecher's cheese right now with
Okay.
this wine.
And it
All
goes.
right. Well, we'll call that a huge success.
Yeah. Well,
I'm 2 out of 3, Maggie.
I hope you like it. I really hope you like it. You know, the
No, I
the
love it. And
original-
I don't drink a lot of red wine. And
Yeah.
but this is like captivatingly good.
Oh, well, here's the world here, right? I mean, my husband makes an incredible wine that is in the Pinot Noir family called Saint Laurent. There's very little of it made. We make a little tiny bit of this Petit Syrah. We make a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc. Make a little bit of Picpoul Blanc, which is sort of like
Mhm.
the white version of this Petit Syrah, a Rhone wine. We're doing it for interest and discovery. So what you've allowed us to do today, what I really appreciate is being able to show you a little bit of the breadth of what we're doing because, hey, we may be a little bit on the old side, but we're like still trying to discover flavors and tastes that we really love. And that's what it gets down to. The holy grail is finding a great vineyard, but the holy grail is finding something that you really enjoy and you want to
I,
drink again.
I hope you don't take this the wrong way. I think you guys are mad scientists.
Maybe so. I have no idea. Are we mad scientists? I don't know. Maggie's been here for a couple of years, more than a couple of years.
Definitely.
Like, oh no, what am I getting into moving here? But
So I want to answer a question that Mark had, which was asking about the Rutherford dust soil effects on the wines and the balance of the grapes' acidity. I'm not even going to pretend to understand the question, but Julie, I think
it's a
you
great
probably do.
question. Okay, so I'm looking at it right now, and here it is, August. What's the date? August 24th. Okay, tomorrow all hell is breaking loose. We've been harvesting for 10 days, but even with our small, we harvest. My vineyard, we harvest 12 times. Just that, I mean, we really get into the micro terroirs because they're all different. But tomorrow all hell breaks loose. We have Sauvignon Blanc, we have a little Sangiovese for a custom crush customer, and we have Pickpool coming in. So, oh my gosh. But the wonderful thing is this about this vineyard, and it affects the acidity and it affects the flavor and the balance of the wine. Within 3 weeks, my vineyard will all be in shade by this time in the afternoon, by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that what that allows in the heat of the late afternoon, anybody who's been here, oh my gosh, you're wearing a coat in the morning or at night. But this time of the day, like you're ready to just jump in a pool, you're so hot. Well, the vines feel the same way. They're like, oh, this is a little cold, but don't I like it because I'm building my acid. And then by this time in the afternoon, they're like, okay, we're all over it. Heat, sun, we got it. Give me some relief, please. So along comes Mount St. John that gives my vineyard shade by that time in the afternoon. And what happens? The vine has a chance to take a deep breath, to build its acids up again, to take maybe dig deep for a little bit more water. It's ready and fresh, and the turgidity of the grape skins, things recover. In the morning, the vines are all opened up to the morning sun, and that's what builds a lot of flavor and character, a special floral. Think about Riesling when you think about the floral character and what happens to a grape skin when it's exposed to morning light. By the afternoon, they're all like, okay, we're done. Give me some shade. That happens here. We didn't even really realize that when we moved here, that would be an attribute of this particular little terroir. But it is something quite remarkable and very, very site specific, and gives me even a Cabernet Sauvignon. Gosh, I can barely get a Cabernet Sauvignon 14.5 in alcohol because it has so much finesse and so much balance, and it's ripe and tastes great when it's not over the top. So that's this vineyard. And Mark, what a great question. And I thank you for letting me explain the function of having where you are with your grapes, where they're grown, what that truly terroir means. And Bernard Portet used to say, okay, terroir, fancy word for place, but in this case, the vines are anchored in that place 25, 30, 50 years, and they're expressing that character more and more and more as they go along. I don't ever want to pull these grapevines out. I hope I don't have to, at least not in my lifetime. I try to get around to see everybody, or Maggie gets around to everybody for sure. And Miguel, who you haven't met, and my husband, who you haven't met. It's a very small team here, but hey, we're into harvest. I've got my bandana on, which I usually soak with water because I'm feeling I'm going to go in and soak this with water right now.
I'm driving across. I'm coming with my Airstream. I'm going to park at your place.
My husband. You have to say hi.
Hello.
There's
Hello. I'm going to park, somewhere in, sort of out of the way, and I'm going to stay for a couple of weeks and just watch you guys do your thing.
That's fine. You'll have to deal with a bunch of golden retrievers and sheep.
I like,
sheep
I
and
grew
two
up,
goats.
I grew up on a farm. I'm fine with both of those things.
My mother I used to come back from a neighbor's farm in the Sierras where I lived for a while, just for a short while, the Sierra foothills. And I'd come back smelling and looking like a sheep, and she'd literally make me strip before I came in. I lived in a trailer for a while, and before I got into the trailer, but now I have sheep again. I'm really happy.
Yeah, no, sheep are great.
Sheep and goats. They're great. They're very humble, and very sweet. They're very dumb,
Very
actually,
nice.
but they're very sweet. So
We had sheep when I
anyway.
was a kid, and they were very nice. The rams weren't so nice, but that was another story.
Yeah. Well, we have small sheep. They're nice. They're really nice.
The rams used to come for me.
Oh no. Oh no. You have to bottle feed them, then they don't.
Exactly.
Then they're sweeter.
Well, Julie, thank you so much. It's so awesome seeing you again. And
Thank
and
you.
Maggie, thank you as well.
Thank
You know, Maggie, we will always have purple haze, you and I.
You just have to have the music on, right?
We gotta get you some of that.
Music.
I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it. But Julie, it's great seeing you, and it's great coming back and visiting with you again and hearing about the journey that since the last time.
Yeah,
And we'll do it again. And we'll do it again. So anyway, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We're going to take a little break through Labor Day. We'll be back we're doing Upstate Vodka. We're doing 3 new cocktails with a special 100% apple made vodka. It's in September. And then we've got another California winer later in September as well. So looking forward. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Julie,
so
stay
much.
safe.
Thank you. You
And
too.
we will see you again very soon.
And it's harvest.
It's harvest.
We'll see you on the flip side.
Thank you.
Or
All
in
right.
the vineyard. All righty. Or in a wine glass.
Take care, everybody. Okay.
Everybody,
Be
thank you
good.
so much. All right.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.